People have been asking this question forever. Are we, deep down, good people or bad people? But what if that's not even the right question? What if who you are isn't some fixed thing, but something that can completely change depending on who you're with?
It's a weird thought, right? I mean, we've all seen it. People at concerts or in massive protests doing things you'd never imagine. But have you ever stopped to think about why? Why does the calm, rational, serious you seem to just disappear when you get lost in a sea of people? Well, today, we're going to get into the psychology of all that. We're going to figure out what's really going on.
The key to this whole puzzle has a name. It's called de-individuation. It sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple, really. It's that moment when your sense of self, your individuality, just kind of fades away, and you start to unconsciously sync up with the people around you. It's the switch that flips, turning you from a unique person into just another face in the crowd. And understanding this is everything.
So, how does this really happen? What's the trigger that makes our sense of self just vanish when we're surrounded by strangers? Let's peel back the layers on this mystery and see what's going on under the hood when we get lost in a crowd.
Okay, first things first, we have to draw a really important line in the sand here. See, not all gatherings of people are created equal. The environment you're in, the psychological setting, is the most critical piece of this puzzle. There is a massive difference between being in a group versus being in a crowd, and nailing down that difference is the key to unlocking this whole thing.
So what's the real difference? Well, think of a group as your family or your team at work. You know each other, you have shared goals, you see each other all the time, there's a history there, it's stable. But a crowd, that's totally different. That's a random collection of strangers at a festival or a big public event. You don't know them, you're not going to see them again, it's temporary, and this is the most important part. It's anonymous. And that's the bottom line. In a group, you've got a reputation. What you do matters because people know you. There are consequences. But in a crowd, you're invisible. You're anonymous. And when you feel invisible, those social breaks, that little voice of responsibility and accountability in your head, they just fail. This is where things start to get interesting and dangerous.
Okay, so we've got the external part down, anonymity. But what's happening inside our heads? Well, it turns out we've all got these different selves, almost like different operating systems on your computer that get switched on depending on the situation. Let's break them down. So first, there's your mental self. This is the real you, the raw, unfiltered personality. But most of the time, we're running on our social self. That's the version of us that plays by the rules, thinks about consequences, and, tries not to be a jerk. But when we're in an anonymous crowd, this third state can get triggered, de-individuation, the crowd state. And in this state, our normal self-awareness just dissolves. We become part of the mass.
Now, when we enter that state of de-individuation, three really powerful things happen to us. First, we become incredibly suggestible. We're super easily influenced by what everyone else is doing. Second, our emotions take over. We become way more impulsive and a lot less rational. Thinking goes out the window, and feeling takes the driver's seat. And finally, we get this incredible sense of power and unity, which makes us feel invincible and not responsible for our actions. That's a dangerous combo.
So that leads to a pretty big question, right? If we're not fully in control of ourselves in a crowd, then who or what is? What's pulling the strings? Well, the answer is wild. The crowd creates its own temporary, unspoken rulebook on the spot, and those rules can be incredibly powerful.
In our day-to-day lives, we follow what are called social norms. These are the big, long-term rules, laws, morals, basic etiquette, the rational. But in a crowd, a whole new set of rules appears out of thin air. These are emergent norms. They're temporary, they're emotional, and they're based purely on the vibe of the moment. If the crowd is happy, the emergent norm is to cheer. If the crowd gets angry, the emergent norm is to be angry too.
All right, enough with the theory. Let's make this real. Meet Alex. He's a civil servant, a total straight arrow, always follows the rules. He's the poster child for the social self. But one day, he wanders into the huge, chaotic Halloween festival in Shibuya, Tokyo. In this massive crowd, Alex is a total nobody. He's completely anonymous. He knows no one can hold him accountable, so the cost of breaking the rules plummets to zero. Suddenly, those social norms he's lived by his whole life, they just start to fade. He sees other people being rowdy, dropping trash, and he joins in. This super serious, rule-following guy becomes loud, rude, and even starts littering. He's doing things he'd never, ever do in normal life, all because he's following the unspoken rules of the crowd.
But here's the kicker. The very next day, Alex is back at his desk in his quiet, structured office, and poof, He's back to being his old self, polite, disciplined, responsible. That wild night wasn't his true self coming out. It was a temporary state, a powerful glitch in his system caused entirely by the intoxicating power of that environment.
So far, we've kind of been talking about harmless stuff, like parties. But what happens when the mood of the crowd flips from fun to fear? What happens when it gets violent? The results can be absolutely catastrophic. This next part isn't just theory, it's about survival.
And look, this isn't just some abstract risk. I want you to let this number sink in for a second. Over 7,000 people have died in crowd-related disasters since 1980. That's more than 7,000 people who went to a concert, a festival, or a match, and they just never came home.
So how do these disasters happen? It usually boils down to three things. First, that feeling of anonymity leads to things like vandalism and riots. Second, pure panic takes over, turning the crowd into a deadly, unstoppable wave that crushes people. And third, rumors and misinformation spread like wildfire, causing confusion and chaos.
A crowd crush is a truly terrifying thing. And it's important to know it's not like in the movies where people are stampeding, it's just physics. When a crowd gets dense enough, a push from way in the back creates a literal shockwave that rips through the crowd. That wave can knock people off their feet, creating a gap. Then the people behind them have nowhere to go but down, falling on top, and it creates this horrific, fatal chain reaction. And this is almost always made worse by two things: constant pushing and physical bottlenecks, like a narrow alleyway or a locked exit.
The single most critical factor for your safety is crowd density. Just look at this. At 5 people per square meter, things are getting tight, but it's generally okay. At 10 people per square meter, you literally can't move your arms. That's the danger zone. Red flags should be going up everywhere. But at 16 or more people per square meter, the pressure is so immense it can literally stop you from breathing. That's the fatal level. It's what happened in the Itaewon tragedy, where 159 people lost their lives.
So what can you actually do? Think of this as your survival checklist. First, before you even go in, scan the area, know where the exits are, spot any potential bottlenecks. Second, use the rule of 5. If the density gets over 5 people per square meter, get to the edge. Third, if you're caught in a surge, do not fight it. You will lose. Instead, move diagonally with the flow to try and work your way out. Fourth, protect your chest. Get your arms up in front of you like a boxer. This isn't for fighting, it creates a few crucial inches of space so your lungs can expand. And finally, and this is a big one, anchor yourself. Remind yourself who you are. Don't let the crowd's brain become your brain.
Look, the forces of a crowd are unbelievably powerful, but they're not unbeatable. Your absolute best defense is your own mind. The key is to maintain your core self and stay calm, even in a large crowd, while observing your surroundings and acting appropriately. So the next time you feel yourself getting swept away by the energy, just ask yourself one question. Who's in charge right now? Is it me or is it the crowd? The answer could do more than just save your life. It could save yourself.